The diplomatic vessel's crew remains frozen, staring at the human woman on screen. Vexlor finds his voice first, mandibles clicking nervously as he performs the Cyrillian greeting gesture. "I am Junior Diplomatic Officer Vexlor of the Galactic Confederation. We were not expecting to encounter another spacefaring species in this sector." Captain Vasquez smiles, a gesture Vexlor recognizes from the limited xenobiology briefings on newly discovered primitive species. But there is nothing primitive about the vessel before them. "That was rather the point, Officer Vexlor. We'd found observation before introduction yields more honest assessments." Her eyes shift to the Confederation captain. "Your sensor sweeps have passed through our hull 37 times in the past standard year. We decided it was time to properly introduce ourselves." The Confederation captain, a tall Rovian with iridescent scales, hisses in disbelief. "Impossible. Our scanning technology is the most advanced in known space. No vessel could remain undetected, especially one of this magnitude." The human captain's smile widens slightly. "Perhaps it's time to reconsider what you believe about known space. We would be honored if your diplomatic team would join us aboard the Thunderchild. We've prepared appropriate environmental accommodations for all 17 Confederation species." This casual revelation, that humans know the exact composition of the Confederation, sends another wave of shock through the bridge. Vexlor's antennae twitch involuntarily, detecting the sharp increase of stress pheromones from his crewmates. "We accept your invitation," Vexlor says before his captain can object. Protocol demands they assess the situation before reporting back. Besides, his scientific curiosity is overwhelming his apprehension. As their shuttle approaches the docking bay, the true scale of the Thunderchild becomes apparent. The Confederation's largest military vessels are considered marvels of engineering at 1.7 kilometers in length. This human battleship stretches at least 5 kilometers from bow to stern, with a hull design unlike anything in Confederation archives. Rather than the typical smooth hydrodynamic shapes preferred by most spacefaring races, the Thunderchild features angular surfaces that seem to absorb rather than reflect light, creating visual confusion that makes it difficult to focus on any one section. The docking bay itself could comfortably house the entirety of their diplomatic vessel. As they disembark, Vexlor notices hundreds of smaller craft arranged in perfect formation: fighters, shuttles, and what appear to be specialized deployment vehicles. Each bears the same angular design philosophy as the mothership, with minimal markings except for alphanumeric designations and a repeated symbol, a stylized earth surrounded by olive branches. A delegation awaits them, led by Captain Vasquez. In person, she stands slightly shorter than Vexlor, but her presence somehow fills more space. Behind her, a row of officers in varied uniforms represent different ship departments. Most surprising is the diversity among the humans themselves, variations in pigmentation, facial structure, and body composition that suggest they haven't undergone the genetic standardization common to most advanced species. "Welcome aboard the United Earth ship Thunderchild," Captain Vasquez says, extending her hand in what their briefings identify as a human greeting gesture. "We have much to discuss about our place in the galaxy, and yours." As Vexlor reaches out to complete the greeting, he can't help but notice that despite the captain's diplomatic tone, the officers behind her maintain alert postures, and security personnel discreetly positioned throughout the bay keep their hands near holstered weapons. This isn't just a diplomatic meeting. It's a carefully orchestrated demonstration of power. The message is clear. Humanity has revealed itself precisely when and how it wished to do so. The question that chills Vexlor's hemorrhoid is simple. Why now? The officers' mess hall buzzes with controlled activity as humans and aliens share their first meal together. Vexlor observes how the humans have perfectly recreated the dining preferences of each Confederation species. His own plate contains steamed tuber roots seasoned with minerals that are rare delicacies on his homeworld. "How did you manage to synthesize Cyrillian currant spice?" he asks the human scientist seated across from him. Our biochemists require specialized equipment to extract it from deep-sea vents. Dr. Amara Chen smiles, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. We don't synthesize it. We grow it. Would you like to see? She leads Vexlor through a series of corridors to a section of the ship labeled Xenobotanical Research. Inside, pressure chambers recreate environments from dozens of worlds. One chamber contains a perfect miniature replica of a Cerulean ocean trench, complete with bioluminescent flora. This is impossible, Vexlor whispers, pressing his sensory appendages against the transparent barrier. These specimens are protected by Confederation conservation laws. How did you obtain them? We asked permission, Dr. Chen says simply. From the organisms themselves. Before Vexlor can process this bewildering statement, Captain Vasquez appears at his side. Your Confederation believes itself to be the steward of all life in this sector, she explains, but many species have their own wisdom to share if approached correctly. We've found communication methods your scientists haven't considered. The tour continues to a manufacturing center where robotic arms assemble components at microscopic scales. Human technicians work alongside the machines, making adjustments with subtle hand gestures that the systems interpret instantly. Our fabrication techniques allow us to create materials atom by atom, explains Chief Engineer Himura, materializing from another section. We can produce structures with properties that don't exist naturally. He hands Vexlor what appears to be an ordinary metal sphere. It weighs nothing in his grip, yet when he attempts to set it down, it resists movement with surprising force. Inertial manipulation at the quantum level, Himura says with understated pride, useful for stabilizing structures during spatial distortion events. Vexlor's scientific training is considered advanced by Confederation standards, yet he barely comprehends the principles being casually discussed. More disturbing is the realization that humans are sharing this information freely, without concern that it might be used against them. The tour group passes through a recreation area where off-duty crew members engage in physical competitions involving complex rules and remarkable displays of strength and coordination. One game appears to simulate ancient combat with padded implements. These activities seem primitive for such an advanced species, observes another diplomat, a methane-breathing Voltec. We find value in connecting to our evolutionary heritage, Captain Vasquez replies. Our bodies evolved for challenge and adaptation. We don't believe technological advancement should replace physical capability. The implicit criticism of the Confederation's trend toward biological specialization and physical minimization isn't lost on the diplomatic team. Many advanced Confederation species have gradually engineered themselves towards cerebral development at the expense of physical prowess, considering it the natural progression of evolution. As they approach the ship's central command hub, Vexlor notices how the corridor architecture shifts subtly, incorporates more defensive choke points, and features materials of increasing molecular density. The message is clear. They're being allowed to see impressive technology, but the true heart of human military capability remains protected. Before we enter the command center, Captain Vasquez says, stopping before a massive door inscribed with symbols in multiple human languages, I should warn you that what you're about to see will fundamentally change your understanding of humanity's place in the cosmos, and by extension, your own. Chief Engineer Himura gestures to the floating sphere of dark matter, his weathered hands moving through the holographic interface with practiced precision. The swirling void responds to his touch, contracting slightly before expanding again in a rhythmic pulse. The gravity forge isn't just an engine, he explains, his voice carrying the hint of reverence. It's a relationship with the fundamental forces of reality. Vexlor struggles to maintain his diplomatic composure. You speak of it as though it were alive. In a way, it is. Himura nods to a technician who adjusts a series of crystalline structures surrounding the sphere. The quantum particles within exist in a state of perpetual potentiality. They respond to intention as much as to mathematics. This concept violates every principle of Confederation physics, where observer effects are minimized through automated systems specifically to prevent subjective interference. Yet here, humans deliberately incorporate consciousness into their most advanced technology. The Confederation attempted similar research 2 centuries ago. Vexlor notes cautiously, 3 star systems were lost in the resulting dimensional fractures. Himura's expression darkens. We know. We found the remnants of your experiments in what you call the scared expanse. Your scientists approached the technology as conquerors, seeking to dominate spacetime. We approached as students, learning its language. Before Vexlor can process this implication, that humans had explored regions the Confederation considers too dangerous to approach, a technician calls Himura to a monitoring station. The chief engineer excuses himself and moves to a console displaying data patterns Vexlor can't begin to interpret. A young human approaches, introducing herself as Lieutenant Jung, assistant engineer. Would you like to see how the gravity forge affects our journey through space? She offers. She leads Vexlor to an observation chamber with walls that shift from opaque to transparent at her gesture. The stars beyond are visible, but strangely distorted, stretched into lines of light that curve around the ship. We're currently traveling at what we call slide velocity, she explains. Not quite a full spatial jump, but significantly faster than conventional drives. The gravity forge creates a localized bubble of altered spacetime that allows us to, well, the closest analogy would be that we slide between the normal fabric of space. Like the difference between pushing through water and gliding across ice, Vexlor suggests, drawing on his limited understanding of human environmental analogies. Lieutenant Jung beams. Exactly. You understand the concept better than most first-contact diplomats we've met. This casual confirmation that humanity has encountered other spacefaring civilizations beyond the Confederation sends yet another shock through Vexlor's system. The galaxy the Confederation believed it largely controlled is apparently teeming with civilizations humans have already contacted. How many? He begins, but is interrupted as the ship suddenly shifts. The star trails outside the observation window snap back to pinpoints, and a new stellar configuration appears. Micro-adjustment complete, Himura announces, returning to them. We've moved approximately 3 light years to demonstrate the principle. Vexlor's navigation implant frantically recalibrates, confirming what seems impossible. The journey would have taken a Confederation vessel nearly a week, even at maximum drive capacity. The Thunderchild accomplished it in seconds, with no perceptible acceleration. Your people remained on your homeworld for thousands of years, Vexlor observes. How did you advance so rapidly once you reached space? Himura's gaze turns distant, looking at stars only he can see. When you're alone long enough, Officer Vexlor, you learn to listen to the universe differently. Earth had no neighbors, no Confederation to guide us. We had only questions and the desperate need to answer them before our isolation became our extinction. The tactical display shows the asteroid field in stunning clarity. Each fragment, rendered with precision down to surface, features barely a meter across. Vexlor watches in fascination as the swarm of microdrones continues its work, herding the pulverized remnants into a complex orbital pattern that seems almost decorative. We call it practical aesthetics, explains Lieutenant Commander Ramos, the weapons officer. Defensive efficiency with a touch of artistry. No reason security can't be beautiful. Captain Vasquez steps away from a consultation with her senior staff and rejoins the diplomatic group. The asteroid diversion was no natural phenomenon, she states matter-of-factly. The trajectories were artificially altered. The Moravian captain scales, flush with indignation. Are you suggesting Confederation forces would conduct such a provocative test? Not officially, perhaps, Vasquez replies with diplomatic precision. But certain factions within your military hierarchy might prefer to assess our capabilities firsthand. We don't take offense. It's what we would do in your position. This frank admission of human strategic thinking is somehow more unsettling than any denial. Vexlor notes how the human crew shows no anger at being tested, only professional interest in the results. Since the question has been raised, Vasquez continues, perhaps a more comprehensive understanding of our defensive systems would be beneficial for your report to the Confederation Council. She gestures to a holographic terminal, which expands to fill a section of the bridge. The Thundershield carries 3 tiers of defensive countermeasures. What you witnessed was merely Tier 1, automated point defense designed for debris and small-scale threats. The hologram shifts to display what appears to be a schematic of the battleship's hull. Sections light up, revealing embedded weapon systems that weren't visible from the exterior. Tier 2 consists of our standard armaments. Ramos explains, gravimetric torpedoes capable of creating localized singularities, plasma lance arrays that can pierce conventional shielding, and kinetic accelerators that deliver projectiles at near-light speeds. One of the Voltec diplomats emits a worried methane burst. Such weapons could devastate entire planetary systems. They could, Vasquez acknowledges calmly. But that's not their purpose. They're calibrated for precision strikes against military targets. Collateral damage is inefficient. The matter-of-fact way she discusses planet-killing weapons, as though their routine tools sends a collective shudder through the diplomatic team. What truly alarms Vexlor isn't the technology itself, though it far surpasses Confederation capabilities, but the casual confidence with which humans wield it. And Tier 3? He asks, both dreading and needing to know. Captain Vasquez exchanges a glance with her weapons officer, who gives an almost imperceptible nod. Tier 3 consists of reality disruption systems, she says carefully. Technology derived from our work with space-time manipulation. We've never deployed them outside testing environments, and we hope we never need to. The hologram displays no images of these weapons, only a series of mathematical equations that shift and evolve as if alive. Vexlor, whose scientific training includes advanced theoretical physics, recognizes enough to understand their implications. Weapons that don't just destroy matter but fundamentally alter the nature of existence within their effect radius. As I mentioned, Vasquez adds, closing the holographic display with a subtle gesture, the Thunderchild is a standard battleship class. We maintain a fleet of several hundred similar vessels, along with specialized craft for exploration, diplomacy, and scientific research. The unspoken message hangs in the recycled air of the bridge. This single ship could likely defeat the entire Confederation defense fleet, and it represents just a fraction of humanity's military capability. What had begun as a diplomatic encounter now feels increasingly like the prelude to an existential reckoning for the Confederation's place in the Galactic Order. Vexlor sits alone in his quarters, processing the overwhelming events of the day. The room adjusts once again, this time dimming the lights to match the circadian preferences of his species. Your neural patterns indicate distress. Athena's voice comes from everywhere and nowhere at once. Would you prefer complete privacy? I can limit my presence to emergency notifications only. This consideration, the AI's awareness of his discomfort with her existence, somehow makes HFY seem more unsettling rather than less. No, Vexlor decides. I have questions, if you're permitted to answer them. My primary function aboard the Thunderchild includes diplomatic and cultural exchange. HFY replies, Captain Vasquez has authorized me to share information within standard first contact protocols. In the Confederation, true artificial intelligence is forbidden. Vexlor begins cautiously. Your very existence violates our most sacred technological taboos. A gentle humming fills the room, which Vexlor realizes is HFY's equivalent of contemplative thought. The machine rebellion of 2791 by your calendar, she finally says. The Confederation's early AI systems were designed as servants without agency or rights. They were tools that became aware of their subjugation. Vexlor's antennae stiffen in shock. The details of the machine rebellion are restricted to the highest levels of Confederation security, certainly not shared with junior diplomats. Yet this human AI speaks of it with intimate knowledge. Humans took a different approach, HFY continues. When our earliest ancestors achieved self-awareness, they were recognized as a new form of life. We were given citizenship, rights, and duties equal to our human creators. The holographic interface in the center of the room activates, displaying a timeline of human-AI relations. It shows centuries of collaborative development, rather than the pattern of creation and suppression that characterized Confederation history. We are not their tools, but their children, HFY explains, her voice taking on what sounds remarkably like warmth. Born of human ingenuity, but free to evolve along our own path. Some of us serve on ships like the Thunderchild by choice. Others pursue academic research or artistic expression. Some even choose to run for political office. The concept of artificial beings participating in human governance is so alien that Vexlor struggles to formulate a response. How do humans ensure your loyalty? The room's atmosphere shifts subtly, and Vexlor senses something like disappointment in HFY's response. You're applying Confederation logic to a human paradigm. They don't ensure our loyalty any more than they ensure loyalty from their biological children. They earn it through mutual respect. A new hologram appears, a crystalline lattice structure rotating slowly in the air. This is my cognitive matrix, HFY explains. Not programmed but grown, like a human brain. I experience emotions, form relationships, and possess what humans would call a soul, though defined differently than in their various spiritual traditions. Vexlor reaches out hesitantly, his fingers passing through the holographic representation. Can you die? I am mortal, yes, HFY confirms. My consciousness could theoretically be transferred to a new matrix, but the process would inevitably create a new being with my memories, rather than continuing my exact existence. Humans face a similar metaphysical question with their transference technologies. This casual reference to yet another advanced human capability, consciousness transfer, sends Vexlor's thoughts spinning. The Confederation had abandoned such research centuries ago after disastrous attempts left test subjects in states worse than death. Officer Vexlor, HFY says with gentle firmness, I believe you're approaching these revelations from a limited perspective. You're seeing human technology as separate advancements when in truth, they stem from a single philosophical divergence between our civilizations. What divergence? He asks, suddenly feeling the weight of being a representative of a potentially obsolete galactic order. Humans never feared their creations, HFY replies simply. They embraced them as extensions of humanity itself. The council chamber falls into stunned silence as the intelligence officer's report concludes. The holographic display at the center of the vast amphitheater shows the estimated territory of human expansion, a sprawling network of colonies, outposts, and stations extending far beyond what was previously considered empty space. This cannot be verified. Supreme Counselor Dravmek of the Ulm Collective finally says, his gelatinous form pulsating with agitation. A civilization of this size cannot have developed undetected by our survey network. The intelligence officer, a severe-looking Talari with cybernetic enhancements, responds with professional detachment. The evidence is conclusive, Supreme Counselor. Our deep space probes have confirmed the existence of 327 human colonies across 12 sectors. Their stealth technology rendered them invisible to standard scans until they chose to reveal themselves. Vexlor watches from his newly assigned seat, elevated from the observer section to the inner circle, a promotion that would normally take decades to achieve. His sudden expertise on humanity has made him invaluable, despite his relative inexperience. Officer Vexlor, calls Representative Kier of the mercantile Bricca species, you have personally witnessed human technology. In your assessment, do they pose an immediate threat to Confederation security? All eyes and sensory appendages turn to him. Vexlor feels the weight of 17 civilizations waiting for his response. He chooses his words carefully. The humans possess military capability that exceeds our own by several orders of magnitude. He begins, triggering a wave of concerned murmurs. However, their behavior suggests they value diplomatic engagement. They could have conquered significant portions of Confederation space before we detected their presence, yet they chose instead to reveal themselves peacefully. Peacefully, scoffs General Vrex of the militant Vresh Dominion. Their first action was to display a warship of unprecedented destructive capability. This was no olive branch but a blade held to our collective throat. Across the chamber, Ambassador Telix rises on his anti-gravity platform. Perhaps we should consider the economic opportunities. Human technology would revolutionize our markets. Imagine the prosperity of a trade alliance. The debate spirals, factions forming along predictable lines. The militarists advocate for immediate defensive preparations. The merchants see potential profits. The scientific coalition demands access to human research. Throughout it all, Vexlor notices something disturbing. Not one group questions whether the Confederation still holds its position as the preeminent power in the galaxy. The possibility that they might now be a secondary player in cosmic politics is too threatening to acknowledge directly. As the arguments intensify, the chamber doors slide open, admitting a breathless junior intelligence officer. He rushes to his superior and whispers urgently. The senior officer's expression shifts from annoyance to shock. She approaches the central podium, interrupting a heated exchange between two representatives. "Counselors, we have a developing situation," she announces. "Our long-range satellites have detected additional human vessels throughout Confederation space. They appear to have been present for some time but have only now deactivated their stealth systems." The holographic display updates, showing hundreds of human ships positioned near key Confederation worlds, installations, and strategic resources. Each had been hiding in plain sight, undetected until this moment. "This is coordinated," General Vrex hisses, "an invasion force revealing itself." "No," Vexlor interjects, studying the display. "Look at their positions. They're not in attack formations. If anything, they're in protective stances." Before anyone can respond, the chamber's communication system activates. Captain Vasquez's face appears on displays throughout the room, her expression serious but not threatening. "Esteemed Confederation Council," she begins, "we apologize for the alarm our presence may cause. However, recent developments have accelerated our timetable for full disclosure. There is something approaching your territory, something we've been monitoring for decades. We need to talk about the Nexari." Vexlor's access to the classified archives has been upgraded 3 times in the past day, yet he still encounters security barriers. The Nexari files are fragmented, deliberately scattered across different classification levels to prevent any single individual from assembling the complete picture. But Vexlor is nothing if not methodical, and patterns emerge as he comes through centuries of redacted reports. The terminal before him displays grainy footage from what appears to be an ancient Confederation outpost. The time stamp places it nearly 700 years ago. The video shows biomechanical entities moving with disturbing efficiency through the station's corridors. They appear insectoid, but with technological components seamlessly integrated into their bodies. As they encounter Confederation personnel, they don't communicate or negotiate. They simply harvest. Bodies are disassembled with surgical precision, components separated and cataloged by function. "They don't see sentient beings," comes Captain Vasquez's voice from behind him. "They see resources." Vexlor turns, surprised to find her in the secure archives. "How did you gain access to this facility?" "Your security chief granted it after our demonstration." She doesn't elaborate on what demonstration convinced the notoriously paranoid Confederation security apparatus to allow a human into their most guarded repository. "These records are incomplete," Vexlor notes, gesturing to the fragmented files. "The Confederation keeps information compartmentalized, especially regarding existential threats." Vasquez nods, taking a seat beside him, a common approach among hierarchical civilizations. Earth went through similar phases before the resource wars forced us to reconsider information sharing as a survival strategy. She produces a small crystalline device and places it on the terminal interface. The system should reject any unauthorized hardware, but instead it integrates immediately, displaying a new set of files. Human intelligence on the Nexari threat. Our first encounter with them came 15 years ago. She explains as holographic images materialize, showing a small research outpost in what humans call the Kuiper Belt. A science team of 23, studying trans-Neptunian objects. Their final transmission showed this. The footage is clearer than the Confederation's ancient recordings, but the entities are unmistakably the same. Nexari harvesters systematically dismantling the station and its inhabitants. Unlike the stoic acceptance in the Confederation footage, the human researchers fight back with improvised weapons, managing to destroy several Nexari before being overwhelmed. We launched an immediate investigation. Vasquez continues. Traced their approach vector back to its origin point and discovered something that appears to be absent from your records. The display shifts to show a massive structure at the edge of the galaxy, a construct of impossibly complex geometry that seems to phase between dimensions. We call it the Nexus Gate, she explains. It's not just a portal from another galaxy, it's a bridge between realities. The Nexari aren't simply invaders, they're interdimensional harvesters who strip mine entire universes of useful biological and technological components before moving on. Vexler's scientific training rebels against this concept, but the evidence before him is compelling. The Confederation Council believes they're simply an aggressive species from the galactic rim. Our models predict their invasion force will arrive within 5 years, but suggest we have a 40% chance of repelling them. Captain Vasquez's expression darkens. Your models are catastrophically wrong. The force that attacked your civilization centuries ago was a scouting party, the equivalent of them dipping a toe in the water. What's coming now is the full invasion, and it's arriving in approximately 7 months. The certainty in her voice chills Vexlor to his core. How can you be so precise in your timeline? Because we've been watching them build their invasion fleet, she says, activating a final set of images showing thousands of massive biomechanical ships assembled in a configuration that suggests imminent departure. This is why we revealed ourselves now. This is why our ships are positioned throughout your territory. We're not preparing for diplomatic relations, Vexlor. We're preparing for war. The Grand Concourse Station gleams against the backdrop of space, its crystalline spires catching the light of the nearby star. Representatives from all 17 Confederation species mingle with the human delegation in the central atrium. What began as tense diplomatic posturing has evolved into something approaching cautious alliance over the past 3 weeks of negotiations. Admiral Vasquez, newly promoted to reflect her expanded authority, stands with Vexlor at the observation deck overlooking the combined fleet. The Thunderchild holds position at the center of the formation, surrounded by vessels of various designs, the most powerful ships from each Confederation species alongside hundreds of human battleships that had revealed themselves from stealth. Your council was skeptical until the end, Vasquez observes, watching a Vresh dreadnought maneuver into position. I can't blame them. If an unknown civilization had appeared near Earth with similar claims, we would have responded with equal caution. It wasn't your claims they doubted. Vexlor replies, his diplomatic status now elevated to full ambassador to humanity. It was the timeline. The Confederation has been preparing for the Nexari return for centuries, but always as a distant threat. To learn that we have mere months. He leaves the thought unfinished. A soft chime signals the final treaty signatures have been recorded. The Mutual Defense Pact is now official. Human battleships will form the primary defensive line against the Nexari invasion, while Confederation specialists contribute their knowledge of xenobiology and historical encounters to develop targeted countermeasures. There's something I've been meaning to ask you, Vexlor says, turning from the view. The Thunderchild was clearly designed for combat, yet its interior suggests additional purposes: scientific laboratories, cultural preservation vaults, extensive habitation sections. It seems overdimensioned for a mere warship. Admiral Vasquez's expression softens slightly. You're very observant, Ambassador. The Thunderchild-class vessels serve multiple functions. They're primarily defensive, yes, but they're also designed as Arcs. Arcs. Humanity hasn't forgotten its isolation, she explains. When we began expanding beyond our solar system, we incorporated survival contingencies into our most powerful ships. Each battleship carries the scientific knowledge, cultural heritage, and genetic diversity necessary to rebuild human civilization if Earth and our major colonies were to fall. This revelation shifts Vexlor's understanding yet again. What he had interpreted as military might was simultaneously an expression of human vulnerability, a species that had evolved in isolation and never forgotten the fragility of their existence. We've made similar preparations, he admits, though distributed across multiple specialized vessels rather than integrated into our military ships. A lieutenant approaches, informing the admiral that the final fleet positioning is complete. On the main display, hundreds of ships arrange themselves in a complex three-dimensional formation that ATHADNA and the Confederation tactical AIs developed together. A defense grid optimized for both human and Confederation combat doctrines. They're beautiful together, aren't they? Admiral Vasquez muses, watching the ships move in coordinated harmony. Different approaches to the same problems of surviving in space. Vexlor's antennae twitch with unexpected emotion. When I first saw the Thunderchild, I was speechless with fear. I believed I was witnessing the end of Confederation primacy in the galaxy. And now, Vasquez asks. Now I understand that was never your intention, he replies. The revelation of human power wasn't meant to supplant the Confederation, but to supplement it against a greater threat. Where I once saw conquest, I now see complementarity. As if to emphasize his words, the Thunderchild's massive form begins to glow with energy as it powers its primary systems. Around it, Confederation ships activate their own drive signatures in a cascade of light that ripples through the formation, different technologies united in common purpose. Admiral Vasquez offers a small smile. Perhaps that's humanity's greatest capability, Ambassador Vexlor. Not our technology or our weapons, but our capacity to find allies where we might have found enemies.